Gentlemen, behold, Quar!
Is that all you wanted to show me?
Yeah. Yep, that's it.
Neat.
Mish Mash! Kitbash Corner!
Yeah, today we're doing some kit bashing with Quar, and we're gonna turn them into 40k units. And I'm very excited to tell you this is a bit of a duo collaboration episode. My buddy Lich's Laboratory decided to jump on the Quar train, and together we're bringing you a bunch of 40k kit bashing. In this video you can expect a bunch of weird abhumans, and yes, I'm finally bashing the space Quarine. You're welcome. In Lich's video, check that out afterwards, he kit bashed some xenos. So altogether, you're gonna have yourself a lot of kit bashing to look forward to. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, share it with a friend, and if you really dig it, consider becoming a channel member. For just $3 a month, you get to see my videos early, and for $5, you get access to a weekly Q&A, in which I will discuss and showcase your minis if you send them in the Mishmash Discord. Speaking of the Discord, if you are a Mashist, you get access to exclusive roles and channels in which you can see cool sneak peeks. Just want to give a huge thank you to my channel members. You guys are amazing. And additionally, if you're interested in Quar, you can use my affiliate link down below to wargamesatlantic.com, and you can plug in my discount code MISHMASH5% for 5% off your purchase. But enough of the promotional stuff, let's get into the kit bashing. First and foremost, I would like to give a warning, I use some 3D printed parts for this episode. I kinda don't consider it true kit bashing, but at the same time, a lot of stuff in Quar right now is only 3D printable, so I bent the rules a little bit. Again, very rare exception to the rule, so don't worry. First mini we're going to be building is a Valhallan Ice Quarrier. Yeah, we're doing this for the entire episode. I'm not sorry. First thing we'll be doing is using the body of a Western Yarn Rifler, and I'm going to be fitting on arms from the Station Forge Grimguard Sisters of War. I actually ended up painting up these gals in a very old episode. And I still had plenty of bits left over, and I gotta say, they're kind of the perfect size for Quar. One of the biggest challenges I faced while kit bashing these guys is getting the arms right, and even here, it's not exactly ideal, but it kinda works. With super glue, they fit pretty nicely to the body, and I used a little bit of sprue goo to kinda seal up the gaps. For his backpack, I ended up fitting on one of the backpacks from the Grimguard Frostwatch from Station Forge as well. I also did an episode on these guys. This backpack worked out pretty well, as it is sizable and it does add a good amount of profile to the figure. I found it very difficult to add helmets to Quar melons, they're just not that easy to add onto. So I decided that using this backpack with an extra helmet attached to it would kind of sell the look better. Now for his melon, this is where things got a little complicated. For the Quar's melon, my buddy Marshall ended up kit bashing one of the Ushankas from 2 Gargoyle Studio on Patreon with a regular Quar head. Again, I know it's 3D printing, not something I plan on doing all too often, but you know, what is what it is. Overall, this is definitely the fastest kit bash in the video, but I'm pretty happy with this guy. Of the 3 figures, I think this guy definitely lives up to the more minimalistic design philosophy that Quar are really based upon. I debated doing more, but I really think as is, he's kinda perfect. But with that, let's move on to the more complex figures. Up next, we have a Death Quar of Krieg. I'm sorry. To start this guy out, I'm using a Yarn Rifler body, and I'm adding on this old backpack from the Cadian Shock Troops Gun Emplacement Sentry Kit. Something shovels. I still think the bit is funny. Not every Krieg player's a chud. If you think that way, then you're probably a chud yourself. And you're fat. For his right arm, I decided to use another Power Fist from the Grimguard Sisters of Battles kit, and I think this is a perfect fit. Using a Power Fist, I kinda consider to be a cop-out because I don't really have to be proportional with the figure, but I don't really care. Power Fists are awesome, what can you say? And for his sidearm, I'm using this generic pistol. Kind of a mix between a las pistol and an auto pistol. I like this a lot because it not only fits Warhammer, but it does kind of fit the Quar aesthetic as well. Now for his melon, I had to get a little complex by snipping a Yarn Rifler helmet, purely for the sake of getting the collar. Once the collar was adhered to the body, I ended up using a Trench Raider melon, and I would snip it right at the back so it could glue perfectly onto the collar. If there's one regret I have, I wasn't able to really make the head look similar to the Krieg helmets, but I did end up making a gas mask, so I guess that kinda works out. But before I even think about sculpting, I decided to go over the model using some sprue goo and some Tamiya. Considering the plastic from Wargames Atlantic and the plastic from Games Workshop doesn't adhere as well, this was kind of a challenge. Also, the helmet is just straight up resin. But overall, it works out pretty well if you use the right ratio. Liquid green stuff could also work pretty well too. Now for his chest plate, I completely sliced it off while leaving the bands for the chest rig intact. And to replace this, I'm using one of the regular backpacks from the Crusader kit. However, before I do that, I want to sand this down the middle so it has a nice curve to adhere to the body better. This took a while, but was worth it in the end. I'd then take a little bit of pure Tamiya and I'd apply it to the middle of the chest and I would adhere that pack. This was in a bid to recreate the typical Kriegsman chest rig piece. At first I was a little worried this would be way too big for the figure. And admittedly, it is a little huge, but I think it works to the figure's art style as it still retains the cartooniness of Quar. I don't know, at first I wasn't happy with it, but I grew to really like it. But now it's time to sculpt, and I'd mixed together some green stuff, and now we're going to be making the gas mask. To do so, I'd wrap around a good amount of green stuff over the snout, and I would basically have it lead into the faceplate. I don't want to obscure this. It looks really silly and it's wrinkled a lot, but using my little rubber sculptor, I was able to kind of push things into place while creating some wrinkles. I also wanted to make sure that I was pushing the head back into place, as I didn't really give it enough time to fully adhere to the body. I'd then snip down the front of the snout, and then I'd snip down an orc stick grenade to make the gas mask filter. This actually worked out pretty well. I was kind of stuck on this part, but after adding some super glue, this was pretty seamless. While it glued together, I'd use the silicone sculptor to add in more wrinkles, and I think this was a good idea. It still looks pretty scrunkly, but I think it works out pretty well in the end. I also want to mention, big shout out to one of my channel members. He was a main inspiration for making the gas masks, so I'm going to give credit where credit's due. But once I gave the green stuff a good amount of time to dry, as well as the filter, I'd use just a tiny bit of sprue goo to fill in any gaps between the filter and the gas mask, as well as the head to the body. Again, because I'm using so many different materials, things are a little gapped, but thankfully it wasn't that hard to fix. Now, this is a part that I actually forgot to film, but it's pretty self-explanatory. I rolled up a little noodle of green stuff, and I wanted to add a tube from the filter of the gas mask down to the little pack. I didn't really add anything as a connector to the pack. I do feel a little lazy for this, but it isn't an area that's obscured, so I don't think it matters all too much. The tube itself is definitely not clean, it's really ragged, and I did that for a reason. I don't really think it was anything that I really needed to put all that much effort into. I decided it would look better if I tried to make it look more like a woven outer layer to the filter, rather than an actual silicone tube. I guess in a way it doesn't feel as 40K-esque, it doesn't feel as high-tech as 40K, but I still think it works out in the end. And I gotta say, despite being a very rickety and very thrown-together figure with all sorts of different crap, I'm pretty happy with the figure. Again, I'm not super psyched about the helmet not being a Krieg helmet, but I don't know. This is something I might revisit in another video. There's something about this that feels unfinished, but I'm still pretty happy with it overall. But with that, I think it's time that we get into the final figure, the one you've been waiting for, the Space Quarine. Oh, it's wonderful that I got to do this right around the time you guys stopped chanting Space Quarine at me. Hee. Teasing aside, this was a fun project. To start him out, I'm using the body of an Iron Squat Prospector, and the first thing I want to do is snip down the Iron Squat symbol. This was a process. This was kind of the main hindrance when it came to the figure. The body is perfect, and it's right around the size that I want it to be for a Mega Quar. And above everything else, it looks like it would house a pear-shaped individual rather well. Now once the symbol was sanded down, I would place an orb into the head hole. I don't know what else to call it. Probably something better than head hole though. But as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm pressing with the back portion of my sculptor onto the green stuff to form a nice silicone ring. I would do this again with a smaller orb of green stuff, and I would continue on until I did about 3 rings of silicone. It does look a little weird, and some areas did end up getting a little trimmed by the weird structural density of green stuff. This was definitely something that I had to do in one go. Man, sometimes I hate working with green stuff. But overall, I still like how it looks. Another factor too, I probably should have used a smaller brush for the 3rd ring, but it is what it is. Now for his melon, I'm using a Quar tractor crew driver from the Crusader side. Reason I'm using this figure over any other Quar model is he's kind of standing up in an upright pose. This kind of allows me to snip him right at the neck and shoulders, so I can place him into the green stuff. I do, however, have to sand things down, and still getting his melon in there was kind of a weird challenge. I ended up having to redo the third silicone ring to fit it in, and I think this was kind of something that I should have taken a little bit more time with. I shouldn't have been so hasty with applying him to the figure. If I had taken just a little bit of extra time, I think it would have looked better. But hey, I still think this looks pretty unique, and for what it is, I think it was a good idea in practice. Now for his arms, I'm adding one from the Death Watch kit and one from the Grey Knights kit with this mounted bolter. There is no way in hell this guy is going to be able to hold a bolter across his chest, at least within a reasonable amount of time for me to build him, so the gauntlet bolter works out pretty well. Now for his pauldrons, I'm going to be using some Primaris Aggressor pauldrons. They're huge, they're chunky, they add on to that goofiness that is Quar, and it really does fit the overall aesthetic. But before I added these on, I had to make sure that the green stuff poking out from under the arms wasn't too much of an eyesore. See, getting the arms onto the body required that I use a little ball of green stuff rather than just using straight up glue, because it wouldn't fit. So poking around with my knife was kinda necessary. Now for the hand on the right arm, I decided to use one from the Iron Squat Prospector kit. I snipped it down right at the gauntlet joint, that way I could just add on some sprue goo and it would work perfectly in terms of size and anatomical correctness. The pose is just a tad bit awkward, but it's not too bad. Plus, they're Quar, being in a spacesuit doesn't exactly allow them for a lot of maneuverability. For his other hand, I just straight up used a regular Quar hand, though I probably should have used another Iron Squat. But whatever. It's still attached to a storm bolter and it looks silly. I then took a little moment to use a little bit of Tamiya to make sure everything was nice and sealed, and once I was done with that, I'd add on a Mark III backpack from the newer kits. I was going to use one from the older 2016 set, but these work better honestly. It's beefier, chunkier, and it has more exhaust tanks. Now it's time we finally add on those pauldrons, and these are gargantuan. I'm so happy I used these. Because of their gargantuan size, I ended up using more sprue goo than regular Tamiya to adhere them, and it really wasn't that much effort, and gosh, it just makes the figure. I'm so happy with this guy. And I'm basically admitting defeat by saying this, but yeah, I gotta say, you guys were right, this was fun to do. As one little final element too, I did add on some pouches and a purity seal just to make sure the little lower area was completely covered up. Kinda wish I did something a little bit more fun with it, but I don't know. I don't think I'm coordinated enough to really sculpt on any green stuff symbols, so I left it up to the paint. And you know, I still have 3 extra Iron Squat Prospector bodies, maybe I'll make 3 more. But that will have to wait for another time. All in all, I'm really happy with these figures, and I'm really happy Lich is finally embracing Quar 2. It's an amazing game, and it's an incredibly different world. And I implore you, after you finish up this video, go check out his. And don't stop there, check out the rest of his catalog. If you like my stuff, you'll definitely like his. But hey, I think I've flattened my beak enough for one video. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe, share it with a friend, and remember to mishmash, kitbash, and paint some fantastic miniatures. And you're gonna. I promise. See ya.